Welcome to the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
Josh Chin here. I'm the host of the E-commerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and founders in the e-commerce industry, and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Now, this episode is brought to you by Chronos.agency. If you run a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand that is ready to scale and unlock the next level of growth and unlock your optimal customer lifetime value through email marketing and retention marketing, Chronos is your company. We've helped hundreds of brands get over $70 million in return from email alone, and our clients get an average of 3,500% ROI through our efforts. We've worked with brands like The Udi, Truly Beauty, Elia Skin, and many more. Now, the next step is to email us at sales@chronos.agency, or you can go to chronos.agency to learn more. Today's guest is a returning guest, Ben Leonard. He is the founder of Beast Gear, a fitness equipment brand, which he scaled past multi-seven figures in revenue and sold it after 3 years. Today, he is an e-commerce consultant and a co-founder of Ecom Brokers, a brokerage specialized in helping e-com brands find successful exits of their own. So the last time Ben was here on our show, we talked a little bit about his history, why he sold his business, how he sold his business. And today's conversation will be all about how you can achieve the same level of success as Ben did, and the process and thought processes of selling a business, and why it's so important to gear up your business for an exit, even if you don't plan to exit one day. Ben, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back on the show, Josh. It's good to be here and good to see you again.
Awesome. How have you been since we last spoke? A couple of episodes back.
Busy. Yeah, great. Busy, but good. So I have two main hats, really. Well, three hats, I guess. I'm consulting. I got the brokerage, but the third hat is really important because I'm still an e-commerce business owner myself. I'm building my own brands. And that's important, A, because I enjoy doing that and I want to build brands and scale them and sell them. But B, in order for me to do what I do with the brokerage, I need to have the current lived experience of understanding what it is like to be an e-commerce business owner. There's a lot of brokers or consultants out there who don't really have the understanding of being in the shoes of their client. And I don't think it's good enough for me to say, oh, well, I used to be an e-commerce business owner, but I sold my business. I still need to be one because the industry is evolving so quickly. And so that's why I've been so busy building my own brands and helping others sell their business to the ecom brokers. It's certainly been an industry I'm grateful to be in during the pandemic because it has exploded, as we all know.
Absolutely. And now that you have one exit under your belt, and you probably have a little bit more insights into how to build a business that's sellable from day one. How has that changed from your experience building Beast Gear and today building new brands? What are you doing differently that you wish you knew when you first started?
When I started Beast Gear, I didn't have a background in e-commerce, and I actually started it as a hobby to give me something to do whilst I was recovering from a bout of illness. And so I never had an exit in mind. Luckily, I was able to rectify that mistake because I did begin to plan for an exit in advance of finally exiting. But if I'd known what I know now, I would have always intended for my business to be sellable, even if I didn't want to sell it or if I wasn't sure if I was going to sell it. Because the happy side effect of having a business which is sellable, neat and tidy and built to sell, which incidentally is the title of a great book people should read, is that it scales because it's more efficient. It's easier to run. It's easier for your customers to use. And so had I known that, I would have made my first business sellable from day one, or certainly been moving in that direction.
So what makes a business sellable? What are some of the aspects that you consider?
So it's not just about making your business sellable, but it needs to be valuable. And the two things go hand in hand, right? Your business, if it's not valuable, it's not sellable. And if it's not sellable, it's not valuable. And there are several things. Timing is the first one. Your business, the time of your exit needs to be when your business is growing. It's on an upward trajectory, which will make it attractive to a potential buyer, but not maxed out. If you've maxed out all the growth, then there's no meat on the bone, no carrot on a stick to entice a potential buyer. The buyer wants to buy your business so they can enjoy some more growth too. If you've already, plateaued, there's nowhere else for them to take it. So that's why you want to reverse engineer your exit and think about when you want to sell it and what are the steps that you need to take between now and then to get there. Second aspect that makes a business sellable and valuable is stability. So is it risky? Are you selling products or services in a risky niche? Have you ever used gray area or black hat strategies? I hope not. These are things to consider about whether your business is sellable. And different buyers will have a different attitude to that risk. What about your growth history? I mentioned growth before, but how has the business done in the past? That's really important. And where are you now? Are you growing or are you plateaued or declining? If you're plateaued or declining, then your business might still be sellable, but it won't necessarily be as valuable as you might have hoped. And how transferable is it? Can you hand over the keys tomorrow? Or if you fall down the stairs, break your leg, and end up in hospital, can nobody else run your business? Well, if nobody else can run your business when you're in the hospital, then presumably a new owner can't take the business off your hands and run it either. So it needs to be very transferable. And then the last part, I suppose, of stability is documentation, which is everything from your accounts being neat and tidy all the way to intellectual property and having all your trademarks and patents in place and having systems and processes, which again comes back to transferability. So that's stability. Of course, if your business is profitable, that's going to be a real help. Not all businesses actually need to be profitable when they're sold, especially exciting startups. But for the most part, for the people that are listening to this, who potentially own an e-commerce business and are thinking of selling it, then that applies. And it goes without saying your business needs to be profitable. And hand in hand with that is defensibility. Are you selling just a mishmash of stuff which can easily be replicated? Or have you got a defensible brand? Have you got a real suite of products which solves problems for a particular group of people, and your product has an identity which is protected with intellectual property, right? Those things are all really important. I can go on about more if you want, Josh. There's lots of things that make a business sellable.
I want to unpack the transferability piece a little bit more.
Sure,
I think that's one aspect of e-com businesses that brands should always think about as they scale and grow, regardless of whether they choose to exit or not eventually, because it creates just so much freedom and so much it reduces stress so much when you're able to take a step away from your business and have a week-long, 2 weeks vacation without having anything crash and burn. I think that's the outcome that we're trying to get to. But what are some of the pillars or components to creating a transferable, stable business? If I were running a brand today, what should I start looking at?
Several things. First of all, I mentioned before systems and processes, right? Mm-hmm. If everything is in your head or stored in your employees or freelancers' heads, or haphazardly stored in Google Sheets here and Evernote notes there, then that is not transferable. That is not sustainable, and also it's not sellable. When somebody comes to do the due diligence on your business and they see this mess, that's just going to be a red flag, and they're not going to want to buy your business, or they're going to buy it for a significant discount. On the other hand, if you have really neat and tidy systems and processes that form part of a wider operations manual that can be handed over, then that's a big green tick, and people are going to be more impressed with that and will be happier to pay more for a business like that. Linked to that is automation. Automation will not only lower the costs of your business and therefore make it more valuable, but it will make the business more transferable. If you have automation in terms of social media, pay-per-click, how you're getting your traffic through paid ads, inventory management, chatbots, email flows, which of course, all about sending out your receipts, then these things all make the business more transferable. The state of your accounts if your accounts are neat and tidy and being handled by proper chartered accountants, then that can be handed over to the accounting department of the organization that buys your business much more smoothly and painlessly than if they're not. So those are the big ones I would say for transferability. Oh, and finally, actually, relationships, particularly with suppliers. So if you're selling physical products, for instance, really important you have a fantastic relationship with your supplier. And if there's going to be any kind of transfer period during which time you might be still involved with the business, then you can ensure that the transfer of that relationship goes very smoothly between you, the supplier, and the new owner of the business.
What are so we'll talk about the relationships and the transfer period a little bit more. But what are some things that we could do to improve the defensibility of a brand, and potentially improving that eventual multiple that we will be getting? If
Sure.
say I don't have an IP of any kind and I'm selling generic product, are there any other ways of creating defensibility?
So first of all, if the obvious one there is, well, get some IP, get your trademarks done, not only in the territories that you're selling in, but also in wherever you're manufacturing your products. And if you have any of your own designs, you need to have them registered or patented. And I love scaling businesses and bootstrapping them, and it's great fun. But one place where I always say to spend the money is on intellectual property. It's always worth it to spend the money with really good IP attorneys who can help you get that right. Aside from that, there's several things that you can do. And I'm a big fan of diversification in 4 ways. Sales channels. So where are you selling your stuff? Are you only selling it on your own website, or are you also on a variety of marketplaces, which could be Amazon, could be Walmart, could be Ball, could be any other one. Could be Etsy. Markets in terms of international markets. Are you purely selling in the US, or are you also in Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, Australia? What about products? Are you relying on 1 or 2 products, 1 or 2 SKUs? Well, what happens if your factory has a problem, or there's an issue during shipping? What if your stock is on a ship and suddenly it gets stuck because an enormous ship has got stuck in the Suez Canal, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're reliant on, okay, that's a once in a lifetime example, but you get the idea. If you're relying on just 1 or 2 products, that can be okay, provided you have backup plans. Do you have a backup factory, right? Do you have a backup way to get your stock into the country? Those kinds of things are important to consider. Or can you diversify and offer a wider range of products to solve problems for the same person, right? So maybe you've proven the concept with your first 1 or 2 products, and now you need to create more products to sell to the same people. So if you have a brand of knitting accessories, you're selling your fantastic knitting needles. Can you now sell them special bags to store their knitting accessories in, right? And finally, traffic. You need to diversify your traffic sources. Are you relying purely on one Facebook ads account? Well, if your Facebook ads account gets banned or goes down for some reason, then you're in a pickle. But if you're getting traffic from a variety of sources, then if any one source goes down, either permanently or temporarily, then you've got a safety net there whilst you get everything up and running again. And so an individual or an organization doing their due diligence on your business is going to look at diversification. And if they see that you're heavily reliant on one channel, one market, one product, one source of traffic, that they may still buy your business, but it's going to be much less valuable to them. And they're taking on more risk, so they're not going to be as willing to pay you as much for it.
Makes sense. And now, when it comes to valuing an e-commerce business, I've seen ranges that vary still wildly from people looking at revenue and having a 0.5x of revenue to 4 times of EBITDA. Is there a range that you typically kind of expect when you broker a deal or sell a business, or does it matter from like industry to industry?
It does matter industry to industry, and somewhat It really depends on the business, the category, the buyer, all sorts of things. But if I was to give you a fairly broad range for considering, and if for the purpose of this conversation, let's assume we're talking about a physical products brand selling online, whether it's on a Shopify site or a marketplace or a mix, anywhere between 1.5 and 6 times EBITDA or SDE. We could talk about those two terms if you want, but more or less net income plus add backs and adjustments. Now, having said that, we can have much higher multiples, particularly if the buyer is a strategic buyer rather than your typical buyer, for instance, like an e-commerce aggregator or a competitor or other private equity. So yeah, there is somewhat of a range.
So if I find a strategic buyer who would benefit greatly from acquiring my business, I would probably get a much higher multiple than.
Yeah. Then we're talking 6, 7, 8 plus, up into the teens. That is the advantage of selling to a strategic buyer. Yeah.
And I suppose that ranges from at different scales of the business, below 1 mil in EBITDA to above 1
definitely.
mil.
I mean, typically EBITDA is used for businesses doing more than sort of $1.5 million in earnings, and SDE is typically for businesses less than $1 million in earnings. But that's those things are fluid and movable. So yeah, I don't know how much your listeners know about what EBITDA and SDE is.
Yeah, shine some light on that.
So EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Basically, it's your net income plus interest expense, depreciation expense, amortization expense, and taxes, which is a classic way to measure the value of a business. It allows potential buyers to compare against other businesses in the same industry by removing expenses that would sort of skew that comparison. Whereas SDE is a bit more simple. That stands for seller's discretionary earnings, and it's the most common one that we use in e-commerce. It's basically the entire financial benefit your business would provide to one full-time owner operator. Now, we know the business isn't necessarily going to be bought by one full-time owner operator, but it's just a very simple way of thinking about what is the value that this business will add to the portfolio of businesses this buyer already owns. And it's simply calculated by taking your business's net profit and adding back certain discretionary expenses. So typically that's the income of the owner and any personal expenses they're putting through the business, travel, etc. But then there's all sorts of other add backs and adjustments that a good broker will make when they're valuing your business. So for instance, any one-time expenses that a new owner is not going to have to do. So once your trademarks have been done, they're done. So you add them back, right? That comes off the loss part of your P&L sheet and goes back in the profit part. Photography's been done, add it back. Video's been done, add it back. The consultant you paid has been done, add it back. All sorts of these. And depending on how good your broker is, depends on how detailed they'll get. And then there are more, interesting adjustments that a good broker will make. So suppose you're selling a product and 2 months ago, you negotiated a lower price with your supplier. Well, typically we value a business based on the trailing 12 months performance. It wouldn't really be fair if the new owner was able to take advantage of having the new lower cost from your supplier, but you're only getting that benefit contributing to 2 months worth of the trailing 12 months performance.
Yeah.
So it's a reasonable and legitimate adjustment to say, well, we will extrapolate back as if every unit you bought was at the lower cost for the full 12 months. Similarly, let's say 6 months ago, you put the price of your product up. And when you did that, you didn't see a drop in sales. Sales stayed the same or went up. I don't know, maybe because customers now see your product as being more premium.
Yeah.
Well, it's only fair that we extrapolate as if you'd always been selling at that higher price, because the new owner is going to get the benefit of selling at the higher price. So it's only fair that the value of the business reflects that. Does that make sense? And those are just two examples. There are a lot of adjustments that a good broker who has the accountancy experience and the M&A experience will do. So that's really important when you're looking at selling your business, that you're working with someone who understands e-commerce, understands accounts, and understands mergers and acquisitions fully, so that they can maximize the value of your business without you actually necessarily doing anything in your business that's different.
I just want to point this out as well. When you're looking at like a 6 times, 8 or 9 times EBITDA or SDE, any dollar that you save from these potential ad backs they're basically multiplied by 6 or 8.
Oh yeah, they're compounding right up. So that's why with a typical, like for instance, let's say you're selling 50 units a day of a product. 3 months ago, you increased the price by $2. So over 365 days, that's 36.5 grand extra profit, right? No, yes, that's 36.5 grand extra profit per year. If you're selling at a 4x multiple, that's 150 grand extra added to the value of the business, purely for taking the time to think about how that affects the real value of the business to the new owner. And when you're dealing directly with an owner, let's say they cold approach you, a potential buyer, and they cold approach you, it's very difficult to push these things through. Or if you're dealing with if you're flipping your business with like a flipping service, it's very difficult to have that done. And so an expert will be doing lots of those adjustments and others, which could add high 6, even 7 figures or more to the value of your business if you do it correctly.
That's incredible. Let's talk a little bit about the period from which you sold after you've sold the business. The deal is done. You've signed the agreement. What happens then typically? Do you stay on the business for a period of time, or do you typically hand things off?
It depends on what the seller wants to do and what the buyer wants to do, but more importantly, what the seller wants to do. A lot of people fall under the false impression that the power lies in the hands of the buyer, and the buyers want you to believe that, right? They want you to believe that they hold the cards and that and then you take their pretty poor offer that they give you. Whereas what you should be pushing for a really great deal, because you're the one that has the fantastic business that they want to buy. So if you want to retain equity, then you and your broker and your mergers and acquisitions attorney, and a good broker will find you one, will negotiate that you will retain some equity. If you don't want to retain equity, but you want to stay on as a consultant to help develop products and take a profit share of those products, then you negotiate that. If you want to walk away into the sunset and have nothing to do with it, then you negotiate that, right? It's really important that sellers understand that they hold the power because it's their fantastic business that somebody wants to buy. So there's lots of things you can do. For instance, when I first sold the first brand I owned, I negotiated a deal where I continued to develop products for the brand, which was great because I enjoyed it, in exchange for a commission on the profits of that product for the first year after it was launched. And that was fantastic because I was having my cake and eating it, because I also negotiated the earnout targets. But because I knew the products that I was going to launch were going to be great, I was very confident we would hit the earnout targets. And indeed, we've hit all the earnout targets. So I've got the full amount from that deal. So, that there's ways to have your cake and eat it and to really structure it exactly how it works for you. We've worked with some people who've decided to keep some equity in the business. So they've sold 70%, say, and retained 30. And what's really exciting is that the moment you sell, let's say you sell 70% at 3.5x. The moment you sell it, the new owner, it's rolled into their portfolio, right? So it's worth way more than 3.5x, right? Double, triple even. And at the same time, the 30% you still own, which is attached to the company, obviously, is also worth much more than the 3.5x. Right. So a couple of years down the line, when the new owner comes to sell it on as part of their wider portfolio, and your 30% gets sold along with it, you might be getting 8, 9, 10, even more X on that 30%, which is really interesting because now you're having 2 paydays, and your second payday could be even bigger, even though it's a proportionally smaller percentage. And what's really, really exciting about that is you actually had to do no work. You've sold the business. The new owner is running the business. You're doing whatever you're doing now, happily knowing that you still own 30% and you're going to get another payday in a few years. So there's lots of ways to do it. A lot of people like to do what I do, which is sell, have some involvement to guide and advise the new owners during the earnout period. It doesn't have to be very particularly labor intensive at all. I'm talking about, a call once a month or something. And then rinse and repeat and use their skills to build more brands, because that's what they've discovered they love doing.
That's incredible. What are some of the configurations or structures that you've seen done really well as far as the deal goes? Or are there typical permutations that you've seen?
In e-commerce,
70-30.
Most aggregators and buyers in e-commerce just want to buy 100%. And what they want to do is deal with you on your own without a broker or a representative, and pay you a pretty poor amount upfront, 70% or something, less even, and then hold back the rest on earnouts, which with targets which are going to be pretty difficult to hit. But a good deal might look something more like this: somewhere between 80 and 100% upfront.
Right.
Often it's not 100% upfront. Although caveat there, if you can see if you are very confident in the growth of the business, you might want to have less upfront and have a really aggressive earnout, because you're going to hit these fantastic targets, right? So that's just a side note there. But a good deal will be, significant proportion upfront, and then earnouts which are A, realistic, and B, protected, such that if you miss an earnout by $1, you're not going to get nothing, right? So the deal needs to be structured such that there is a fair sliding scale, or a ladder, if you like, of earnout targets, right?
Right.
And the deal also needs to be structured such that if for some reason the business doesn't hit an earnout target because of mistakes by the new owner, they went out of stock on a product, they failed to order products in time, they didn't, various reasons, the deal needs to be structured such that the legal agreement, such that you will still get your earnout target if it can be demonstrated that the target was missed because of poor management by the new owners, for example. Another good example of something good to put in a deal is that you still get access, read-only access, to things like the back end of the website or any marketplace that you're on, so that you can get in there early and help the new owners and say, look, I've noticed this. I'm helping you in due time so that this mistake doesn't occur. That those are all important things, and it's difficult to negotiate those into the contract when you're dealing, with like a flipping company, or if you just you've been cold approached. And I guess the other thing to add to that is that when you are selling your business, it's really, really great if you have a competitive environment of several good potential buyers at the table who all want to buy your business, because then you have a bit of an auction going on.
Right. That makes sense. Might be a rookie question here, but do you talk about the potential buyers that you have with each buyer? Do you bring that up on a in conversation at all?
Yes, but not at the very first stage. So what we tend to do is that after we've done all the work to maximize the value of the business, fully understand it, get the owner started on the due diligence process, so that we hand over to the potential buyers a really impressive, neat and tidy business with a ribbon on top, so that when they do their due diligence, they don't discover anything they don't like. They're very impressed. They're not trying to push for a discount. We present that to a pool, not an enormous pool. It's always enough to have a competitive environment, but always it's got to be the right buyers, right? People who actually have the capability to run this brand. If you're selling pet products, we wouldn't market your business to an organization who specializes in windsurfing, right?
Yeah.
For example. So after we have interested buyers, then we introduce them to our owners, right? The sellers. We don't tend to get the sellers too excited about who may or may not buy the business until we actually have something to show them.
Right.
Because that's just not the right way to do it.
What is so last question here. What does the process look like if I own an e-commerce brand and I've done my homework and I have a great business and I've decided that I want to sell this business? What are the routes that I could take between working with an advisor like yourself versus going about looking for a buyer myself?
Yep. So you could sell it directly to a potential buyer.
Yeah.
The way that usually happens is that they will actually often approach you. And initially that seems wonderful. Oh, fantastic. I put all my heart and soul into this business and now someone wants to give me quite a lot of money for it. And they'll dangle a carrot in front of you that is quite a lot of money. But your business isn't worth a carrot. Your business is worth a whole sack of carrots. And typically you will get a lower price and terms and structure which suits the buyer rather than you. And it's a lot of hard work because you're trying to run your business, let alone sell it. When I went through the due diligence process for selling my first business, it was so intense. I thought they were going to come around to my house and scan my retinas. They want to know everything about the business, and rightly so. They're giving you a lot of money for it. Yeah. But they will find you because they have big lists. They tend to scrape the internet to find e-commerce business owners.
Yeah.
And, don't get me wrong. These buyers are great people. I deal with them every day. But business is business, and they want to take your business off your hands for as little as possible. And pray that you don't bring anyone else to the table for a bidding war, and pray that you haven't had a competent broker calculate and maximize the value of your business by doing all the add backs and adjustments we spoke about before. The other way to do it, or there's a couple of others. You can flip it on a flipping service, which is not a good thing to do, particularly because they are working at a very big scale. They don't particularly tend to do the work to actually maximize your business and then market it. They just kind of slap it on their website, right? They list it on their website, like the eBay of business. Yeah. So then the other way to do it is to use a qualified broker. And there are good, obviously we're one of them, and there's other good ones out there. Ideally, they need to be experts with lived experience on all sides of being a business owner, being M&A experts, and being accountants. And that's really important. And they need to, this is important, right? If they're trying to encourage you to just sell your business now, that's a red flag. It might be that your business is ready to go now, and that's great. But they need to be working with you until you are ready to sell your business and not the other way around, right? They need to be taking you through that process to understand your business and understand when is the right time to sell it and how much do you want to get for it and what's realistic to get for it, right? If you say, I want to get 10 million for it, and they know that if they're telling you it's worth 10 million, but it's blatantly isn't, then that's a red flag. Yeah. So they need to do the work to get your business, ready to go, and then actively market it to potential buyers. They need to be adding value to your business such that whatever that you're paying them has to pay for itself multiple times over in how much more you get for your business, right? And then they need to position the business properly and help you structure the deal to suit you. So that's what to look for when you're selling your business.
Is there anything else that I should be asking you that I haven't yet across the two conversations you had?
Sure. I would say the last one I would say is, it's not really a question, it's more just of a statement, I think, which is this.
Sure.
There'll be people listening to this who are saying, my business, I don't ever want to sell my business. Well, that's fine. But just hypothetically, step back for a minute, put the kettle on, have a cup of coffee, sit down, take a step back and say, well, where do I want to be in 5 years? And the answer might be still running my business. That's okay. 10 years, 15, 20. And there's going to come a day when you're retired. And the landscape will have completely changed, and the technology will have probably completely changed. And it might be that you see that you're going to hand this business down to your kids or whatever, and that's absolutely fine. But the situation may completely change, and that may not be doable. And there's going to have to be some kind of an end game. And it would be a real shame for that end game to just be winding up your business. So start thinking now about how you can make your business sellable and valuable, even if you don't want to sell it anywhere, anytime now or in the next few years. So that when the time does come, your business is in really great shape to get the ball rolling on getting that process underway. And also so that if somebody does come out of the blue and say, hey, we want to buy your business, then, and actually the numbers are dangling in front of you are big enough to tempt you, then it's in great shape for you to get the ball rolling then as well.
Ben, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you to have this conversation started?
Sure. Head over to ecombrokers.co.uk, and we have a button you can press there that says value your business, and you can put some data in there, and then we'll get the ball rolling. That allows us to do a very broad indicative valuation, and then we will really dig in and understand your business later when we get in touch. You can email me, ben@ecombrokers.co.uk, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Just search for Ben Leonard.
Awesome. Ben, I've learned a ton. I've taken a bunch of notes as well. Again, as usual, I always learn a ton from speaking with you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Great fun to talk with you.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.